All right. Hello, everyone. Um, I'm Martin Lindsay, board chair for the Culinary Historians of San Diego, and I'd like to welcome you to our first online presentation of our eighth season of talks. We normally give free public meetings on the third Saturday of every month, most months, at the downtown San Diego Public Library on food history and culture. Our next presentation will be next month online again, Saturday, October 17th, with Alicia Maher on the story of Salvadoran food. This is our first online Zoom meeting, so if there are any technical difficulties, please bear with us as we try and figure things out. But today I'd like to welcome Kitty Morse, who's going to be talking about the history and types of Moroccan cuisine, Tagines. Kitty Morse was born in Casablanca of a French mother and British father and came to the United States in 1964. She obtained her master's degree at the University of Madison, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and she's the author of 9 cookbooks and a memoir, Mint Tea and Minarets. She's also translated that into her native French. The ebook was also selected as Best Book of Morocco by the Gourmand World Awards. Her best-selling Cooking at the Casbah, Recipes from My Moroccan Kitchen, is now in its 10th printing from Chronicle Books. Her other titles featuring Morocco's cuisine include The Scent of Orange Blossoms, the Shepherdic cuisine.
Sephardic.
What's
their spelling?
The Vegetable Table, North Africa, and couscous. She was a food columnist for the Los Angeles Times. She's written for Bon Appetit, Fine Cooking, Sunset Magazine, and Eating Well, among others. You can find her books online at her website, kittymorse.com, or on amazon.com. And she tells me that she's been putting the finishing touches on her 10th cookbook and memoir, recipes of her great-grandparents and grandparents. And you've been testing, what, 70 different recipes while we're in lockdown? So without further ado, may I present Kitty Morse. And I'm going to share the screen so we can see some slides here.
Let me give my little chat and then, yeah.
You want to give your chat first?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be good.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. And I see there's 36 participants, so welcome. And in Arabic, marhaba, welcome to my Casbah. Today we're going to talk about tagines, and I will tell you as much as I know about tagines today. And to begin with, I'd like to read a little text to explain to you exactly how tagines figure in the Moroccan diet. Anyone who has sampled a tagine knows that the word stew hardly characterizes this traditional Moroccan dish. In many homes, a tagine's exact composition is a closely guarded secret handed down orally from mother to daughter, as are most recipes in Morocco. And what I want to stress, there is no N in tagine. It drives me nuts when I heard Oprah and Emerald say, oh, you can have tagines. Tagines. It's not a tagines, please. It's a tagine. What is a tagine? Simply put, it's North Africa's comfort food, specifically Morocco's, because in Tunisia, tagine is a crustless quiche, in parentheses. In Morocco, the word tagine refers to a communal dish redolent of fresh herbs and exotic spices. A French linguist, Paul Père, believes the word tagine evolved from tian. You've probably heard of a tian. It's a vegetable sort of gratin dish, a Provençal word meaning a sort of stew, or it came from the Berber word that defines the dish and the implement as it does in Morocco. The word tagine refers to the shallow glazed earthenware platter topped with a distinct conical lid in which the food is cooked and served. And at the end, I will show you an array of tagines, but there's always a conical lid, and there is never, ever, ever a hole in the lid of the tagine. I'll tell you more later. The origin of this unique cooking vessel has never been determined. Fortunately, owning one isn't a prerequisite to preparing the contents. Its function is similar to a slow cooker's or a Dutch oven. And people always laugh at me when I say my slow cooker is the most used implement in my kitchen still. It's an old one, I love it. Its function is similar to a slow cooker's or a Dutch oven, a heavy cast iron Le Creuset is really good. This ancestral dish also mirrors the philosophy of the slow food movement. In traditional Moroccan homes, the slow cooking process is attained by cooking over glowing coals of a brasero called a canoon. And can you see this? I have a miniature one. You see, there's my canoon. You put the coals here, you bring them to the white hot stage, you put your tagine on the top, and you forget it for a couple of hours. And if you've been to Morocco, you have probably seen these on the side of the road, but more later. Tagines vary from region to region. In most homes, a lunchtime tagine is the main meal of the day. In my hometown of Casablanca, a tagine is more often than not the plat du jour, prepared with seasonal ingredients. It's the subtle combination of flavors, fresh herbs and spices in the sauce that define a tagine. And many tagines are well suited to a vegetarian diet. In fact, I wrote a book about it, The Vegetarian Table North Africa, on Amazon.com because it's out of print. Often, chunks of winter squash, potato, or turnip cook alongside cumin-flavored garbanzo beans or cinnamon-infused lentils. Now, a tagine has a specific place in the Moroccan meal. If you have had a Moroccan meal, also called a difa or a feast, you can feast on maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 dishes. The meal will open with an assortment of salads, cooked and raw, might remind you a bit of Lebanese mezze. Then it goes to the bastila, that very famous crowning dish of Moroccan cuisine, a phyllo dough encasing a mixture of sweetened chicken, saffron, and herbs. So bastila is number 2. And then come the tagine. But there is an order to that as well. First come the sweet tagines, and then the savory tagines. Because tagines are made with a combination of seasonal ingredients, whether fruit or vegetables. So in Moroccan cuisine, a tagine of beef, pearl onions, and raisins, flavored with ras el hanout, this very famous blend of spices that I'll talk about later, is a case in point. In my book, Minty and Minarets, where I have 35 chapters and 35 family recipes, I give a recipe for tagine of pigeon with toasted almonds and honey. It is one of the most superb combinations in the Moroccan repertoire. So is a traditional tagine of dried plums. Dried plums were formerly known as prunes. Haha, we don't want to hear the word prune anymore, so get your dried plums. Enhance with a soupçon of cinnamon and ground ginger. A touch of honey adds a delicate sweetness to meat or fowl, combined with dates or figs, and this can be fresh or dried, or with fresh fruit like apples, quinces, or apricots that all grow in Morocco. Because remember, Morocco is a Mediterranean country. On the savory side, chicken with olives and preserved lemons, which I will show you how to make at the end if you would like, is a classic of the Moroccan repertoire that has attained international renown. In fact, now you can find preserved lemons on the internet. However, don't buy commercial preserved lemons. They are not preserved. They are boiled in water or a salted brine. Nah, I'll show you how to make your own. So have ras el hanout, which is well known now in the United States, and shermoula, a spice mixture that includes olive oil, lemon juice, garlic, and cumin, and cilantro, which is often reserved for seafood. When kefta meaning ground beef, is dressed up with a dash of spices, pedestrian meatballs simmered in a bed of caramelized onions ascend to a whole new level. In fact, kefta in an onion sauce is what we prepare when I'm at Darzitoun very often because the ingredients are inexpensive, but it's a combination of spices and herbs that give the sauce. The tagines are renowned for their sauces, and that's what you have to do, have the perfect combination of herbs and spices. Morocco's mild Mediterranean climate nurtures the cornucopia of fruits and vegetables that contribute to infinite variations. Also, just as an aside, Morocco is a Mediterranean country on the northwest corner of Africa. It has two coastlines, one on the Mediterranean, one on the Atlantic. We have 2,000 kilometers of coastlines, which means that seafood is really part of the Moroccan diet when you are on the coast. When you go inland and toward the mountain, then you switch to meat because you don't want to have fish that's traveled a few hours. I mean, the Moroccans have to have their fresh food. There's also trout in the mountain streams. So all these tagines have been adapted to the region. Another tagine that's quite very famous, very well known, is a tagine of seafood with olives and carrot sticks and chermoula marinade. It's one of my favorites because the base is a chermoula and tomato and cilantro, and the carrot sticks in that particular tagine or a meat tagine at the base of the dish prevents the food from burning, because remember that it's on top of these coals if you're making a traditional tagine, and the carrots taste so good afterwards, the best part of the meal. In addition, like coq au vin or beef stew, a tagine's depth of flavor only increases with advanced preparation. In addition to its unctuous sauce, the appeal of serving a tagine lies in its dramatic presentation. At the table, when you follow tradition, you bring the whole tagine to the table, you set the middle of the table, because remember, it's a communal dish, and you lift the lid, and the is part of the experience. Believe me, it's worth it. Bismillah, may you enjoy this meal, invokes the host as he removes the lid. Now you also have to serve a tagine with bread, fresh crusty bread. In Morocco, this bread is a round loaf. It's leavened. It is not pita bread. It is a leavened bread. I'll show you a picture. And you break the bread. The host breaks the bread before you start to eat, hands everybody a piece of bread, because you're going to use the first 3 fingers of your right hand in Muslim homes, because the right is considered unclean, and you're going to grab a morsel of that bread and dunk it into the sauce, which often is the best thing. Everything is good, but I tell you, the sauces are really, so you end up eating a lot of dunked bread in the sauce. And besides that, if you are invited in someone's home in Morocco, you will always get the best serving, because the host will make sure you get the best piece of meat and the best piece of vegetables and enough bread. So during a traditional difa, as I said, you may have 3 or 4 tagines. So this dunking in the sauce in the communal dish may be repeated 2 or 3 times, depending upon the wealth of the host, because meat and fish are expensive. Since most tagine dishes generally in America say the tagines are in the United States are generally made for 6 to 8 people. But if you have 12, unless you buy the enormous all-clad gorgeous tagine, I don't know if they still make it, but that feeds about 15, then you would consider making a Dutch oven. And many Moroccan cooks do that too if they have a crowd. You prepare it in your Dutch oven and you slow cook it, and then you transfer it to a tagine dish for serving. So I'll tell you about that at the end. Tagines can be cooked on top of the stove or in the oven, and I will go into more detail about that at the end of my slide presentation, and during which I will give you a couple of readings from my book that pertain to the slide that you will watch. So, Martin.
Yes.
On y va.
Okay. I'm going to switch to a screen view so you can actually see the slides. And if you do have questions, go ahead and type them in the Q&A panel at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll address those at the end after the slide presentation. So here we go. All right.
So let's, the first slide was of a tagine in a glazed tagine pot. The reason I have this one up, it happens to be the cover of Cooking at the Casbah, but it's also one of my favorite tagines, and I think I told you about it during my talk, but it's a Tajina Seafood. In Casablanca, Rabat, Agadir, all the coastal towns are renowned for their tagines of seafood, and this one is particularly good. The blend of spices in this tagine is cumin and cilantro and ginger and a touch of saffron. But you can see that at the front there's preserved lemon, which is a must for this tagine, and olives, marriage made in heaven, and the carrot sticks, which believe me, you're going to fight over. So the Tajina Seafood in the style of Casablanca. And I will, if you saw me before over my shoulder, you might see this tagine pot here that I just display. I do not cook in this tagine pot because it is it's not been glazed in a proper manner. I brought it back from Morocco, so I'm not quite sure of the lead content. So I cooked my tagine in a different pot, and I'm serving in this particular one. Next slide, please. Okay, I already showed you my canoon. If you go to a Moroccan restaurant, someone's home, especially one that, you know, a country home, this is the way that they will cook your meal. Of course, they will have started to prepare the meal probably the day before, because in a Moroccan home, there's no more greater honor than to invite a guest, and especially foreign guests, and that's the truth. So the coal in a little metal brasero and the traditional canoon. Now I have several that I now have in my backyard, but I have barbecued over my canoons. Notice the glazed tagine lid. This is a kind of tagine that I will again show you at the end because I have to reach for them. But you notice there's no hole at the top, there's no hole on the side. The food will be in one of those platters that you see on my left, so probably, I don't know, on my left, unglazed. And the tagine will be set atop the coals at the white heat stage and then forgotten until mealtime. Next one, please.
Oops.
And if you go to Marrakesh, or if you're in a Medina or at a souk, souk is a country market. Medina means old town. And look, they're making me eat my words because I had not noticed that this guy has a hole in his tagine lid. He probably, I tell you, it's not the way. But what happened, and I go on and on about these holes, is because when tagines, when Moroccan cuisine was discovered by Europeans or Americans, and all the designers went to Morocco and started making things to export. And I noticed one year, one tagine pot had a hole in it. And I said to the vendor, "What's this?" He says, you know, no, you don't want to do that. This is for the French. So don't look at that hole. Look at the other ones and notice the coolie hat shape and the conical lid. Now, why this conical lid? It's quite ingenious. And remember, this has been in use for centuries, if not millennia. Let's go with centuries. Because it's a way when the food is simmering in the platter at the base for the steam to gather at the top and then to come down the sides and to keep the food moist. It is quite ingenious. I refer to it as the ancestor of the crock pot. And for me, the crock pot, a slow cooker, is the best substitute for a tagine in America. This looks a little bit sort of messy, but that's how, if you eat at an open market, and many people do in Marrakesh now, you will purchase your tagine right off the brasero. Notice the olives. Morocco is an olive producing nation, and our olives are really the best in the world. Excuse me, Italy and Tunisia, but they are flavored. Among the olives, you see the green and you see the purple. The purple ones, which is the stage of the olive between the green and the black, are absolutely the best. And so they go in the tagine, or they're just served as an appetizers. And you can see that his braseros, the guy's braseros, have undergone much use. Next, please. An assortment of tagines really for tourists. I was in Morocco last year, 2019. Tagine styles change, and the modern designs are what's in at the moment. And these are glazed, they shine. So the glazed tagine, if you know that they are glazed, then you can use them to cook in the oven or on top of the stove. However, I always, just be careful, especially if you purchase them on site in Morocco. Many of those are imported into the United States, and just make sure that you read about the lead content and that it's oven proof. Next. I'm sorry about this. I'm only including this because I think it's hilarious. As I said, I went to Morocco last year, and where I led a tour with a friend of mine, and we're in the desert spending the night in the Sahara under the tent, and there was obviously no electricity. So I found that I often get, because I have so many tagines, I often get left with the lid and the base is broken. And I thought that was so ingenious. It's filled with wax, and it's actually a light. You light the wick. Sorry, but I just had to include it in there. So
That's a candle.
It's a candle. Yeah, I thought it was quite clever. Next. So voila. Another tagine of mine. This one is in the Cooking at the Casbah. This is Morocco's star tagine of chicken with preserved lemons, artichoke hearts, and olives. You notice the lemons? In Morocco, we like to serve them in quarters, not the whole lemon. And if you have read my book or used one of my recipes, I will show you how to make the lemons at the end. But what I do in my own recipes is I separate the rind from the pulp. You don't throw out anything, because the end result is a salted jam. It is not these things floating in brine. So it's a jam, and you get a syrup. So I use the syrup, the pulp in the sauce, and then the rind I either chop very finely, or I just set on top of the chicken. I mean, it's transformed the chicken, even plain old chicken from the supermarket. It's just transformed when you cook it the Moroccan way. And you see, this is a food photo from Cooking at the Casbah. And of course, we had to lift the lid. I'm sorry that you can't get a whiff of the aroma, but it's really good.
Oh.
Okay, next. Voila, preserved lemons. From whole lemons to salt to my salted lemons, which I will show you. But these are totally preserved. They have a marmalade-like rind, and the syrup has a marmalade-like consistency. Very easy to make. You can use either Eureka's or
Meyer?
Thank you, Meyer lemons. The Meyers will preserve faster because the rind is thinner. But you preserve the whole lemon. You do not add water. You do not add oil. You do not add anything. My great grandmother is looking over your shoulder. She told me about this. She showed me how to make these. Next, please. If you go to the market, as I said, we practically can't cook without olives or preserved lemon. So you go to the market, you buy 1 or 2 preserved lemons if you need it. Green olives with pepper or hot pepper, cayenne, all the little condiments that are important in Moroccan cuisine, and this stack of purple olives. I am here in the market in Meknes. Meknes is inland, not too far from Fez, if you have the map of Morocco, inland, next to the Atlas Mountains. It's an olive producing region. And actually, the Romans introduced the cultivation of the olive and the vine. Morocco is a wine producing area. To that area, the most fertile area in Morocco. And during the olive picking season is coming up in October. Then you do the green ones a bit earlier. You wait for them to turn, because those are the best. And then you can see in the corner black olives, which in Morocco we usually use as a appetizer for aperitif, and some tagines. Next, please. my spice vendor in Casablanca, the marché, the central market in Casablanca, has become a tourist destination. But I used to go to this guy regularly, and what is he serving me? Purple olives. The interesting thing about the marché here and the spices that he also carries the curry that my godmother told him how to prepare. She, talking about 50 years ago, gave a recipe to one of the vendors for her curry because my godmother was British, but her husband had been posted in India and then she ended up in Morocco. I talk about her in Minty and Minaret. She's a British woman with all her antiques. And she loved curry. So she went to the marché and she told them how to make curry. And when I was researching my book, I found a sign that said, Le curry de Madame PB. I was very happy. Next, please. Badania, one of the most famous tagines, but not as well known outside the United States. I mean, outside of Morocco. The tagine is made with fried eggplant, tomato, cilantro, and I believe this one is a chicken one, although I could just as well make it with beef. So first you have to prepare your eggplant. Now, why are we using eggplant? Well, this dish, the origins goes back to Persia in the 9th century. There was a princess, Princess Buran, who was going to get married to a young king or prince of the time. And she loved eggplant. And Buran, which originated actually on the Indian subcontinent. So Buran wanted to prepare for her meal eggplant 9 different ways. And the history of all this eggplant comes from my colleague Charles Perry. If you remember, Charles was a food writer for the LA Times, wonderful food historian. And he wrote a book about eggplant. So he gave me the story of Badania. So Budan, as she was called, wanted a tagine to eclipse, or a meal or a dish to eclipse all dishes. And so she had her cooks prepare barania. In Morocco, badania is interesting because it's morphed into the meaning the foreigner. The foreigner, of course, referring to Budan. So I find that many of our dishes, especially tagines or bastila as well, have a history behind them. And you can make badania. It's very easy. It's the one I go to when I entertain. The eggplant melts in the tomato sauce. It is very nice. Next one, please. That's the tagine I was referring to in my talk. This is a recipe in Minty and Minarets. Pigeon in America called squab, so that you can charge $20 a bird. But it's really, really, it's the old pigeon that struts in your parking lot. You know, in Morocco, you catch them, you eat them, and so there we are. But when you make them with toasted almonds and saffron, and a little bit of honey or ginger, it's a superb combination. You probably know that saffron is the world's most expensive spice. So your expenses in a Moroccan dish might well be for that spice, but not for the ingredients. They're all available at a supermarket. And I would not say go and buy a squab. Those little birds, what are they called? I'm sorry, I forget. You know.
Rock. Cornish
Yeah,
game.
Cornish hen. Oh, thank you. I'm losing my marbles too. Well,
Wow.
are a great substitute.
Yeah.
Next, please. Excuse me. I love this one because of the fennel bulbs. In spring, Morocco, as I said and I repeat, is a Mediterranean country. It's just that we happen to be on the other side of the Mediterranean, but we have all the same ingredients. And so a tagine of fennel bulbs right here in the spring, fennel braised in with the herbs and the spices and beef and little onions, and this is a real springtime tagine. When you use a fennel, you get fennel. Don't throw away the fronds. As you see, you can use the fronds not only for garnish, but you chop them up, put them in your sauce, and it'll add a little flavor. What I have discovered and sometimes use in America is fennel powder. So you sprinkle a little bit of fennel powder over this. It is superb. Next, please. Sorry. Dry today. a tagine, again, of chicken and seasonal vegetables, because when I go to the marché or to the souk, the open air market in Morocco, I simply buy what's available right there before me on the ground sometimes and come home and prepare a tagine. So you can see how versatile it is. A stew, but it's the blend of herbs and spices. And this one, again, I have preserved lemons because I love it. Carrot, sweet potato, probably zucchini, and green pepper. You know, your imagination is your limit with a tagine. Next, please. Oh, one of my favorite. I call this a sort of a breakfast tagine. It's the tagine bouchée in minty and minarets and in cooking at the Casbah. I give credit to our caretaker bouchée. As you know, minty and minarets focuses around the riad, the mansion that my father willed us 90 kilometers south of Casablanca. We own this enormous Moorish mansion perched on one of Morocco's main rivers. It's a historic landmark. But anyway, we need a caretaker, and while I was, which we still have and pay, but our first caretaker was named Bouchaib. Bouchaib appeared in 1964, the day my father bought a pile of ruins, and then he spent the next 20 years restoring our riad. But Bouchaib was a superb cook. He was a cuisinier, really, been trained in Casablanca by a French family, but Casablanca was too big for him. He wanted to come back to Azemmour. Al Medina is enclosed within high walls. There's maybe, I don't know, 5,000. Anyway, he's a country boy. And when I usually went back to Dazitoun, unfortunately he left us about 10 years ago, he made this tagine of eggs and tomato and olives. Honestly, it's what I have for breakfast very often, and it is one of my favorites. So the base is a cumin-scented tomato sauce with onion and spices, and of course olives, purple ones. And when the sauce is simmering, you just scramble eggs in it. You know, salt, pepper, cumin, and whatever. It is a wonderful dish, and it keeps for 2 or 3 days. So I make a pile of Bouchaib's egg tagine, and I keep it in the fridge, and I zap it in the microwave for a few seconds, and I have breakfast. I highly recommend that you try this tagine. Sometimes when I feel fancy and I'm entertaining, I serve it in little cups of brioche or, you know, that kind of thing. Tortilla, whatever. Next, please. The same tagine as on the cover and a closer shot. So you see how the fish is prepared. And in Morocco, funnily enough, you don't say cook the fish for 3 minutes until it flakes. You put it in the tagine, you cook it for an hour and a half, and that's what you have. Because very often it's a whole fish. But here I use a mahi or whatever, nice halibut, big fish fillets. You notice my very, very famous and delicious carrots and the olives. And here I'm using green. Why not?
So using a firmer fish would probably be better.
Yeah, a firm fish. Yeah. Shark is okay. I'm not very fond of shark. You could use tuna too, but if you overcook them, they become quite tough. They're good. So mahi and halibut, I think, and you know, watch the cooking time. Okay. Next. I was in a hotel last year. I think it was in Marrakesh, and you see they have their breakfast tagines prepared. Eggs, tomatoes, onions, and then cooked in this. And merguez, the lamb sausage that North Africa is known for, and that you can find here at some butcher shops. So they have that at the buffet, and I thought, how clever. You see, they alternate between the tagine dish and the cast iron pan, which is what I also do. And these are Moroccan tagine pots. In Morocco, we don't really care. We've been cooking with these unglazed or, you know, these earthenware pots for hundreds of years. But in America, you have to be careful. They have to say for decorator use only. Great. You dunk bread in that, heaven. Next, please. Muruzilla is another one of those iconic tagines, sprinkled with sesame seeds. Muruzilla, the word, derives from the name Maurizia. Maurizia was the name that the Greek and Romans gave to the northwest corner of Africa. So you see how far back a history of a tagine goes. This Muruzilla is usually eaten after the feast of the lamb, because you have to slaughter the whole lamb. Muslim families, 40 days after Ramadan, have this huge feast. You slaughter the whole lamb. You use every single part of the lamb. This is made obviously with the best part, the leg or the shoulder, and you cook this meat in a honey-based sauce, a very thick honey-based sauce, because the honey and the pepper, the ground black pepper, is marriage made in heaven for honey. In fact, the Romans recommended it. It acts as a preservative. It just will keep this meat for a week in your fridge, of course. But this is the history behind Muruzilla. And the sprinkling of sesame seeds, or it could be toasted almonds, is also quite traditional. Now, a tagine is a meal in itself. It's not something that you serve alongside couscous or a side dish of vegetables. I forgive you if you do, but it's not the traditional way. So this would appear in the meal as a sweet tagine that you would serve with bread, and then you would move on to a savory seafood or a savory meat tagine. So that is the story of Muruzilla. The Romans considered Morocco, or the northwest corner of Africa, as the breadbasket of Rome. And as I said, they introduced the cultivation of olives and wine grapes. And also they brought in combination, because this, you can read of this combination of honey and black pepper in Apicius, the Roman gourmet who wrote a cookbook, the first cookbook. Next, please. Khubz. That's what you use to dunk in the sauce. Khubz is the Arabic word for bread. And as you see, it's leavened. So I have in Azemmour, from Darzitoun, 50 paces to walk to my local baker. And I go and I buy one of these for, a few dimes a piece. And I always have fresh bread. So it could be whole wheat, it could be white flour, it could be any kind of flour. And then I don't quite understand what he sprinkled on top. Probably some kind of flour. Next, please. Ras El Hanout is perhaps our most famous blend of spices. And I dedicate quite a chapter to it in my in my book. And I'm wondering, I'll do the reading at the end, I think, because I'll just go with the flow here. But I will tell you more about it. So in my little town of Azemmour, I go to the spice vendor. And I say, I want the Ras El Hanout. And he says, well, what would you like in it? And I usually say everything. And in this particular blend, because they are Ras El Hanout, first of all, means top of the shop, or the best the shop has to offer. So the recipe for Ras El Hanout will vary with each cook. And believe me, I don't make this one at home, 32 ingredients and counting. No, but in each of my books, I give you a combination of spices that you can use and you can play with and make your own Ras El Hanout. I just read yesterday, somebody described this as curry. Well, maybe for the blend of spices, but Ras El Hanout is not hot. In Morocco, we don't like picante. We do not like picante because what we're looking for is the combination of flavors that will remain on your palate. So if you want hot sauce like harissa, which is not Moroccan but Tunisian, you serve it on the side. So back to Ras El Hanout. I will try and figure out. I mean, you see the turmeric, the rhizomes, you see a stick of cinnamon, you see blade mace, this orange kind of plasticky looking thing on the lower right hand side. You see ginger rhizome, you see whole nutmegs, you see that's an Indian seed. Sorry, losing my. You have
Sorry.
cardamom, merci. And you have malagueta pepper, and you have juniper berries, and you have just whatever you can think of is what goes into Ras El Hanout. And on request, if you feel rich, you have a Spanish fly. And I have two of them here. It's historically, yes, Spanish flies were included. It is those ghastly little flies that fly around the fig trees. Anyways, there's a Latin name for them. And some men thought that it increased virility. So they include Spanish fly in their Ras El Hanout blend. And usually in Morocco, you can buy little sacks of pre-blended Ras El Hanout. But it's more usual for you to buy this and then go home, toast all the spices, which is what I did actually for this particular recipe, which is in minty and minaret, and then you grind them, pound, 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 pound. One of the most, wow, how can I say, traditional or local sounds in the Moroccan Medina. If you're walking through the old city, you will often hear the sound of the mortar and pestle, pound, 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 because
Hmm.
every woman pounds her own spices. Next, please. There she is. I hired Naima when I used to lead my own tours. I gave cooking classes at Darzitoun. I don't do that anymore, but I hired Naima. She's one of my neighbors, and you see she's holding the merhaz, the mortar and pestle, and yeah, she was grinding spices for our cooking class. In the background, you see the fountain that is a central focal point of our atrium, which is about 40 by 40 feet. And it's probably a Portuguese stone fountain 2 or 3 centuries old, because our little town of Azemmour used to be a Portuguese outpost. The Portuguese went down the coast of Africa, and in Morocco they established a number of comptoirs, of outposts, where in the beginning, they traded with the Phoenicians, and they didn't have a means of communication. I mean, they didn't speak the same language, so they would set their whatever they were exchanging on the ground, with spices or jewelry or whatever, and they would barter, and they would exchange spices for whatever the Phoenicians were bringing. So that's historically. And the floor is made up of zilij. Zilij are Moorish tesserae or tiles, like Roman tesserae, each one cut by hand. And when my father had this riad restored, he brought in artisans from Marrakesh and Fez and all over Morocco, and they spent months redoing the floors and the columns, not these, but other columns in the house. You'll see lots more pictures in Minty on minarets. Next, please. Another ingredient that's sometimes added to a tagine or to a salad is argan oil. And I'm including this spice here, this slide here, because argan has become sort of an in word in America, but especially at your beauty shop. You go to the beauty shop and she has argan shampoo and argan cream and argan this and argan that. And I'm like, how can they have enough argan for the whole world? This is the area where this slide was taken, which grows argan. It's endemic to the region. You go 20 miles to the north, south, or west of the region, there are no argan trees. So I have no clue. Probably Israel, maybe South America. Who's planting all this argan? And be careful when you buy argan oil or an argan product. Look at the back on your label and see what the contents of argan is. Sometimes it's probably a millionth of a millimeter, but they can say that. Now, so this is on the Moroccan Sahara side, and what's interesting is that it's women who have brought back the cultivation of argan trees and have energized a population that was really not doing very well. There's really not much to do. So this is really great. These are women's cooperatives. I'm always pleased to plug them. It's called Kalad Mguna. If you look on the map, you will see Kalad Mguna. Next, please. My friend and neighbor, Rahul. Rahul is Morocco's foremost modern painter and ceramicist. But to me, he's a neighbor and a friend and a cook. In his hand, he's holding an implement that looks like an amphora. And he is going to teach me here how to make tangia. Tangia is a dish that originated in Marrakesh and in the south, where Abder is from. It's also called bachelor stew because men would fill it with the ingredients of the day: cheap pieces of meat, some spices, maybe raisins, maybe prunes, maybe whatever they had at hand, all the spices, and then they seal it with butcher paper and a string, and then you take it to the neighborhood oven, the same one that cooks your bread, because what they do is they keep the tangia in the coals overnight. So you prepare this the day before, and you go to the ferran, or the baker, and he keeps it for you. You go pick it up the next day. So for the workers of Marrakesh who work in the fields and come back in the evening, this is sort of like your takeout, and you just go to the baker and he has your tangia ready for you. Next, please. The implement tangia when it's not black. But you see, I had this in Marrakesh, and they keep it warm over the coals, butcher paper and string, and then you open it, and it's very, very fragrant. And so, what's really ironic for me is that in Marrakesh, it's become one of the most expensive dishes you can order in a restaurant. And you go to the souk and you get a bowl of tangia, just a tagine that has been cooked overnight. And also, of course, the spices are important. So be careful if you're in a restaurant in Marrakesh. You may have to order a tangia the day before. They'll tell you, if you want tangia, call me the day before. Next, please. As we did, we kept our tangia. It's a little bit fuzzy here. When Abder took it to the neighborhood baker, I went with him. We retrieved our tangia. Look at how black the paper is. And now we have the tangia just waiting for guests in our canoe. Next, please. And the result is this. This recipe is in minty and minarets. It's beef and onions in a sauce of saffron and turmeric, because we love turmeric in our food. We love, the Moroccan cooks love the gold tint of a dish. I can't tell you, but very often you pair tagine with turmeric, saffron with turmeric, because saffron, as I said, is the world's most expensive spice. If you go to Morocco, it's well worth you're purchasing it, and it's okay to bring it back in your suitcase, because the customs people will smell it and say, oh, she's telling the truth here. I've done it many times. But so you do saffron for flavor and turmeric for color. You combine them. It's almost automatic, and turmeric is also a rhizome and very good for you. So the resulting tangia you serve like this with plenty of bread, and you put your guests around and you dunk. I added the red peppers a little bit for color, but it's very tasty in a tangia. Next, please. Back to argan oil. This is the fruit or the drupe of an argan tree, and I did not include a slide because I think everybody has seen it so many times, but it's goats who climb the trees, who eat the drupes, spit the seeds, spit or excrete traditionally. Now it's a whole commercial operation because the Germans first started with argan oil as a cosmetic, and now it's exploded all over the world. But this is what the fruit looks like. You crack it open, you get this nut, and you crack this open by hand with a stone, and you get what we call une amande, an almond, a seed. Now, when you buy cosmetic argan oil, the seed is ground and pressed when it is raw. The only way, in Morocco we use it more for cooking than we do for beauty products. But when you roast this and then you grind it, and you get an oil that's a little bit similar to hazelnut oil. It's very, very flavorful and very strong. So I would recommend, if you use argan oil in cooking, first of all, make sure that it's a culinary kind, and then you use it sparingly, like you would sesame oil at the end. In some instances, you cook with it, but you have to be careful of the temperature. So I would say sprinkle it at the end like you would sesame seed. And so this is what argan fruit looks like. It's called a drupe. Next, please. And of course, you have to end your meal with a glass of mint tea, which is the title of Minty and Minarets, because I needed mint tea. And for those of you who are hesitant about the meaning of minarets, and I realize a lot of people were after I came up with my title, but this is a minaret. It's the tower from which the imam, the prayer leader in Muslim circles, calls to prayer 5 times a day. The pot-bellied teapot is also very, very traditional. Now they're all over the internet. So the mint tea glasses, you never fill to the top. The mint tea, you use half of the glass and you sip. And if you're invited into a Moroccan home, it's a custom to sip 3 glasses before taking your leave. Next, please. Love it. These are my glasses. They're hand painted. What I have done here is I combine mint with lemon verbena. Now, in California, with lemon verbena is quite clear. It's not the verbena you see on the side of the freeway. This is lemon verbena. I have had one in a pot for 20 years and it keeps coming back. So either you use the leaves fresh or you can dry them, which I often do, and then you make, a tea. And lemon verbena is supposed to help you fall asleep. It is a soporific. Next, please. Voilà, minty and minarets. The minarets that I picked here is in Rabat, Morocco, the capital of Morocco. It's an 11th century minaret in the Shella Roman ruins. You know, the culture and the background of Morocco is made up of Mediterranean cultures. So yeah, this dates back to the Roman. There's a whole Roman town here. But what I really like is the two nests for the storks, because in our mind in Morocco, we know that the storks migrate from Alsace every year. And when they come back to Morocco, springtime arrives, and the Moroccans, you never touch a stork. It's good luck to have it on top of your house. You never harm a stork. So what's funny is these are enormous. They're probably a meter wide. They're huge. And I call them condos. The stork is on top. She has her eggs. She has her babies. And underneath, all the other, all the other birds attacking on the swallows, the sparrows, or whatever. They all live in the same nest. So, next. Oh, just to show you one of my television appearances, and I had the tagine dish, which I will show you. You see that I cheated a little bit with a Le Creuset, and I have all my ingredients, my silver container for the mint, and little tagines for all sorts of, ingredients and things. Okay, next.
And that was it.
Okay, so let's get back to this. Okay, am I doing okay?
I think so. I think we're fine. We have 53 people here online.
No. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. But no, what I was going to do is a bit of show and tell. So I'm going to move back and forth a little bit
Okay.
to show you a couple tagines, and I have to make sure that my leash extends. So, well, first of all, God, this is heavy. My preserved lemons. I'll show you how to make them later, but you see that it is a syrup. Can everybody see this on the screen?
I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay, because I just have that little teeny screen for myself. Okay, so you see how I've interspersed the lemons. All I used in here was salt, period, and I'll show you at the end. Now, my tagine. This tagine pot I got in Morocco, it weighs a ton. I mean, this is the kind of thing you buy on the side of the road. So you see the top is glazed, and actually this is an artsy one. And the inside is not. There is no hole. This piece of pottery is there because that's how they throw it on the wheel. And that's how you bake it upside down in the oven. So this is the top, and you see that my base here is glazed, but underneath is not. So this is perfectly okay to cook in. I could put this on my canoon. I can also put it on top of my stove on medium low, as long as I use a diffuser. And I didn't bring mine, but a diffuser is a round plaque of metal that you put on your stoves. Mexicans use it a lot as well. So be sure you have a diffuser. Because yeah, this can take the coals of a canoon, but sometimes an American or a Western stove might be a little bit stronger. But here it is glazed. And so I would cook my meal and I would serve it in here. And I would lift the lid and invite you in. So this is a traditional tagine here. I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes. I find that even the little ones are very practical. I often serve honey or jam or whatever I want to do as a side on the table on these little tagines. And these are really now very popular on the internet. A little mini tagine. We use that for salt and pepper sometimes. And if you can see over my shoulder, I have a beautiful glazed. Now this one is totally glazed. I'm good with it. I don't care about the base. I brought that back from Morocco. So this is perfectly okay to cook in. And then even my lid is glazed. So this is a modern tagine, but there's no hole in it.
So,
I'm big on no holes in my tagine. um, so this is, let's see, what do I have here? Oh, this one's I'm particularly fond of. I brought this back from Darzitoun. This is one of my father's dishes. This is very, very, very intricate. Very intricate. And it's all totally glazed. So I got it in pieces. I was so upset. But I found a magician here in Vista where I live who glued it all back together. So it's glued back together, but it's still close to my heart. So you see another one of those tagines. And let me reach for the little one. Literally from the side of the road. Believe me, they weigh about 2 to 3 pounds. But yeah, this is, I would not say for you to cook in, but this is what Moroccans would cook in. Unglazed and coulis lid and unglazed.
you say from the side of the road. Did you
Literally,
actually?
yeah, side of the road. Because the vendors set up wherever they can. And, you know, I love to stop at sides of the road in every country that I visit. So this is literally from the side of the road. Um, how am I doing on time here?
Oh, well, I think we're all right. We do have some questions if we want to take a
That's that's I'd be happy to.
I have a question from Barbara asking, do you make your own Moroccan bread at home?
I have made it. I don't make it regularly, but yes, I have, and it works well. You know, the flours are a bit different, but the hobs adapts well. I have also given my recipe when I when I used to for dinners or something when I was cooking for large groups, given the recipe to American bakers, and it turns out quite well. What's very nice about Moroccan bread is the round loaf. Make sure you sprinkle something on top, like anise seed. I love anise seed, or fennel seed, or cumin seed. You know, on top of the bread, it gives you a nice little crunch and a nice flavor. I don't know what could I. It's not as crusty as a baguette, but it is leavened. So you prepare it in the morning, and actually at home at Darzitoun, Bouchaïv's wife would do that in a big earthenware platter called the gsa, and you need this great exercise, and then you let it rise a couple of hours, and then you take it to the neighborhood oven to be baked. So yeah, it turns out. I don't know if I have a recipe in Minty, but you can always reach me on my website, and I'd be happy to answer specific questions. That's fine.
Also from Barbara, please suggest substitutions for your ingredients, which may be out of season, therefore unavailable, like fava beans, for example.
Oh, favas. Well, there's two. There's dried favas and fresh fava. Well, you know, it's a seasonal cuisine. So you cook with what's at hand. If you don't have fresh fava beans, oh, try zucchini. I mean, the same base of spices and herbs would go for zucchini and a vegetable such as chayote squash or a vegetable. I wouldn't say peas. I mean, you can get, I love those little frozen peas, so I don't use fresh peas, but substitute a seasonal vegetable is all I can say, because we also use dried fava beans and for soups, for very, very delicious Ramadan soup served during Ramadan. So Ramadan this year was in May, so they probably had fresh fava beans. But when Ramadan, goes back into January, then you will make your soup with dried fava or huge lima beans.
Mhm.
You can adapt the ingredients.
Okay.
And garbanzos. Oh, I love garbanzo.
Garbanzo beans would be good too. Either
Yeah.
dried, yeah.
Dry, yeah. No, fresh, in Morocco we don't use the fresh, which is kind of interesting because when I go here to Mexican markets, I find fresh garbanzo beans. I couldn't believe it. But no, in Morocco we use the dried kind.
We have a question from Mike. How do you prepare a new tagine for its first use?
Oh, great question. Thank you. I forgot to tell you that. Well, earthenware, my minis here, what I would do, and even the glazed. Well, you wouldn't get this one in America, so forget it. So the glazed earthenware that I just showed you, you would paint lightly with vegetable oil. That's one way of doing it, huh? Very lightly or very lightly with olive oil. You turn on your oven to 200 and you leave it in there overnight, the base. You can do the base and the inside of the lid, but that has no purpose. And that's how usually I prepare my tagines. But the glazed ones, the shiny ones, they're fine. They go in the oven. I mean, they tell you this is fit for an oven use. But if you're in doubt and you don't know how, then that's how I would prepare it.
Speaking of that, I've got a question from Carolyn. Do you test your tagines for lead before using?
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, because in America, you will find the tagines do not have lead. The ones from Morocco, I don't care. You know, I've had them for years and I don't use them very often. And I tell you the truth, if I'm only using my unglazed tagine dish for serving, I'm not going to worry too much about the lead content. It's just if you leave your food in there for hours or days that should become a concern.
Here's a question from Deborah. My tagine has a hole. Should I cover
Ah,
should I cover it?
yes.
There you go.
Watch
Simple.
it, and in Morocco even I have seen this done. They use a matchstick because the holes are tiny, but it defeats the purpose because the lid is meant to gather the steam and put the steam back where it belongs. And so I have seen Moroccans use a matchstick, anything that will block the hole. And actually, often, even if I use one of my traditional tagine pots in the oven, because the lids of a traditional tagine pot sometimes is not very tight fitting, unlike the Le Creuset tagine, which remind me to talk to you about that. But if it's a traditional tagine pot, steam escapes from the side sometimes. So I cover the base with foil and then I put my lid and then I bake.
Yeah.
That's my primitive way of keeping all the steam in. Now, for those of you who own a gorgeous Le Creuset tagine, and I used to demonstrate that tagine in their stores, beautiful, and they seal so tightly that all the juices remain in. And what I found is in my book, in my recipes, if I'm using a Le Creuset tagine, take away some of the liquid I call for in my recipes. If I say a cup of liquid, put a half a cup. Because the Le Creuset is so tightly sealed, you will have all the juices that remain. So lower the amount of liquid in my recipes. I don't know what others do.
Here's a related question from Amy. For the two recipes included in the email, those are the two that you supplied, the sweet and the savory. Can you provide alternative instructions for cooking in a crock pot?
I love it. I have to learn to crock pot or slow cooker. Amy, I just put everything in my slow cooker and I let it cook overnight. I absolutely adore my slow cooker because it's really the traditional tagine. So I put everything, except if it's a slow cooker that goes from stove top to oven. Sometimes I brown the onions, I brown a little bit of the vegetables, I brown the meat in the same pot on top of the flame because I can. And then I transfer it to my plaque, that heating pad, put the lid on, and I usually, on purpose, prepare this overnight because the next day you have the most meltingly delicious, fragrant tagine that you can think of.
Here's a related question from Dan. Do proteins get browned when they stew? Or should you be browning?
No, no. No, they don't. They just, they cook the meat, cooks off the bone. They don't get, but I tell you a secret of a food photographer because we took pictures for, my husband is my food photographer. Sometimes, and in fact, when I'm serving guests, I will take the cooked meat from my tagine that's been cooking for hours and I will lightly brown it before serving because it's prettier. In
Just give it
Morocco,
a
we,
sear.
ah,
Just to
pardon?
give it a little sear.
Just to give it a little sear. And the Moroccan proverb said, first you eat with your eyes. So not only do we like the golden tint, but if it's going to make the dish prettier, yeah, that's the secret.
I have a question from Tata. What is the best way to clean a tagine?
Soap and water. I would not put it in the dishwasher. Just mild soap and water, and that's it.
Okay. And I have a question from Eric. I lived in Casablanca in the summer of 1966. When I was there, I remember eating these triangle-shaped meat pastries with
Ah,
flavored meat and fried outside. Do you know what might have been inside?
oh, yes, I do. You should buy my books. I give you the recipe. They're called briouat. Briouat. Actually, in Arabic, Moroccan Arabic, because every country has its dialect, it's called a love letter. And it's made with phyllo dough, which in Morocco is bastila dough or warka dough, a dough as thin as onion skin. It's like an Indian samosa, but it's crispier because it's made with phyllo. So in all my books, I give you recipes for the briouat. And fillings, they can be savory or sweet, à la Marocaine here. I happen to love the savory ones. I make one with a filling for the bastila, the chicken and shredded and sugar and herbs. I make one with ground beef and cumin. You make them with seafood. And you also make them for dessert with rice, milk, cinnamon, and raisins. Voila. And follow the method if you're reading one of my recipes because it's pretty self-explanatory. You have to cut the phyllo in specific widths and then you fold it up as you would an American flag. And then you can freeze them. Do not defrost before frying and fry them. And briouat are wonderful. You can make tons ahead of time. It's a bit like Vietnamese egg rolls. You put them in the fridge or the freezer and you bring them up when you need them. So I don't know where you were in Casablanca, but those are the usual fillings.
Okay. And then we have somebody asking for the recipe for the Fennel Tagine. It's in your book, isn't it?
It's in Minty and Minarets, yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
some of it, and the Minty and Minaret is downloadable, by the way. Amazon has its own thing. I really don't meddle with it, but I know you can download the book.
And can you make the same dishes in a Dutch oven?
Absolutely, yes, yes, yes. That's all I have to say.
And last question from Brian. What is the percentage of salt per lemon weight to
Ah
make?
la la, no, Brian. Okay, yeah. Do I have time to show how to make a lemon?
If people want to hang on, we don't really have a time limit. If people want to still hang
Okay,
on,
okay. This is for Brian.
it's not going to take
And
like 6 months of aging and everything, right?
no, no, no. 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
Okay, okay, 6 weeks.
Okay. Let me see. I'm trying to tell me when you see me here.
Yeah, we can see you there.
You can see me. Okay.
There's a little something in the way.
This,
Yeah.
my arm. Can you see me with the lemon?
I cannot see your hands.
Okay.
If you
Can you?
put it on the screen, yeah, we can see that. We
You
can see
can.
it.
Okay, good. You can see me here.
Yes.
Great. Okay, this is for you, Brian. This is my claim to fame, Moroccan preserved lemon. It's not only mine, but the method is from my great grandmother. And actually, I have a YouTube, whatever, movie, Kitty Morse, I think, Kitty Morse preserved lemons, demonstrating exactly this. So I have a Maya here, because this is what grows in my garden, and that you can use a Eureka. And this is what I do. You slice the ends just to stabilize it. Can you still see me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I mean, I can't, okay. So now I'm slicing my lemon in half, but not all the way through. I'm giving it a 90-degree turn. I'm turning it upside down, and I'm turning it, slicing it in half, but not all the way through. So you see like this, It's still holding together. Now, there are many recipes, but all I can tell you is this is my great-grandmother's. So, then I have a little jar, not a big one. So, Brian, take note. Could be about a tablespoon of salt. This is coarse sea salt. You can use kosher salt. You fill each slit with as much salt as it will hold, and you put it in a jar. And I picked a little jar. I'm not making more than that. So, of course, you do the two sides. If you have a quart jar, you continue until the lemons reach the top. Don't add liquid, don't add spices, no nothing. You keep pressing down on the lemon. As you see here, I can press down and add another lemon here probably. So fill your jar with lemons. And don't use lemons that are larger than a golf ball. Doesn't work. Don't use these huge things. If they're on your tree, you want lemons that are about like this. And some of the best ones I have found are in season at Trader Joe's in a little bag. There's a dozen lemons. They're perfect. So you fill your jar, and you'll see the liquid come up the sides of the jar. Put the lid on and leave it until the next day, because the salt will extrude a lot of more liquid. The next day you have space for maybe one, maybe two, maybe three lemons. Keep on pressing. You're not making pancakes out of lemon, but you are pressing down pretty hard. Put the lid on. Continue until you cannot fit another lemon in that jar, and then put the lid on whatever jar you have. If it's a metal jar, I usually put plastic wrap between the jar and the lid because it protects from the corrosion. And then the main ingredient is patience. You have to wait 4 to 6 weeks. This is a jam. It has to turn into a jam. So I've seen quick recipes. You freeze them, they come out. You boil them, they come out. You add sugar, nah. If you want the real thing, you start today and you will have it in about 4 weeks. So during that time, your jar, you're going to give it a little shake every 2 or 3 days, because the salt will gather at the base and you want it to be homogeneous, the whole thing. And you'll see by doing that, there's a page on my website that's dedicated to preserved lemon, and one woman wrote one day. She's a food writer up north in San Francisco. She said, I treated them like pets. I check them every day. But then she was totally won over. Honestly, I've given this demonstration 5,000 times, and I hope people, I know they have adopted preserved lemon. Now, while they're preserving in your kitchen for a month, keep them on the counter. Do not refrigerate, because that kind of slows the preserving process. When they're soft, and by soft, this is what I mean. This is a preserved lemon. Look at my knife.
Hold it up just a little bit more. We can't see. There we go. Yeah.
See? Now I have the rind and I have the pulp. I grate the...
Just a little higher. There you go.
Okay, so yeah. I like to scrape the pulp of that and add it to salad dressings, basting fish, making pastilla with eggs. I mean, it's lemon and it's salt. It's delicious and it's not harmful. And then the rind I like to cut up or save for a tagine. But a salad dressing with this is delicious. My husband likes me to put it in our tuna salad. So, and I had a student once upon a time. I love this. She rubbed the pulp of the preserved lemon on the rim of her margarita glass.
Oh, there you go.
I think that is brilliant. So anyway, I hope, Brian, this answers your question, but please make your own. I have not found a good source of commercial preserved lemon in America.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. We don't have a question. We just have somebody saying, Michelle, saying, thank you, Kitty. Very interesting and informative. And I want to thank you again for giving us this demonstration and such an informative talk. This has been great. We will be posting this video online on our website, and we are currently updating the website, so it'll be up there shortly. And next month's presentation, like I said, will be on El Salvadoran food, and be looking for the links on social media. And you can get Kitty's books online from her website, kittymorse.com. or Amazon.com. And we're really looking forward to your new book, too.
Oh, that'd be so cool. I can't
Uh,
wait to tell you about it. Thank you so much. Not Morocco. It's not Morocco.
it's family recipes.
It is. It
It's
is.
a recipe book made with love.
It is, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you next month.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bismillah, everyone. Enjoy your meal.